Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Grad Chat program. And I am delighted we have our council members and our panel members of the GSA Council who want to provide some information about the constitutional change, the rationale behind the change, as well as providing some clarity on what is being proposed to change, what has been proposed for the change. So it's a great opportunity for people. I'd like to welcome all the attendees and the panelists. And before we start the session, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on the virtual land that we meet, pay my respects to the past, present, and emerging leaders and the leaders of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. So a warm welcome to you all, and it's wonderful to kind of get you all on panel. So on the panelists, I have Emily Roberts, our GSA President. Welcome, Emily. I have Madeline Johnson, the General Secretary. I have Jeremy Waite, the GSA Activities Officer, and they are going to be the members of the panel. And to support them in their work, we've got Sucheta, our Vice President, and Tessa, who will be joining us in the conversation. I welcome all the attendees. We have our staff, Tavita and Stuart, helping us, and our attendees who will have the opportunity to have asked questions, get clarity, but really an exciting period for GSA. The Constitution is really an important tool for the organization because it gives us our aim, our purpose. It designs a framework for us to work collaboratively and effectively as an organization. It's mandatory according to our legislation requirements and within the ACNC framework. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking. I have this joyous role of asking lots of questions. So I'm going to welcome Emily as our first panel member on board to give me a bit of it'll be good to hear a little bit about GSA and why, Emily, the need to have a constitutional change, or how did we reach here? So over to you, Emily.
Hi everyone, hope you can all hear me. It won't let me turn my video on, so you're just going to have to enjoy my voice. GSA started this discussion about constitutional reforms long before I was even a graduate student. One of the key issues is that we are currently not compliant with the Act about a incorporated... Okay, sorry, the screen in front of me just changed, but the point doesn't change. We're undertaking a new constitution because we believe if we're going to be making changes, we should make the ones that are going to best equip the organisation for the future. We've looked at a lot of different possible models, and the one that we're putting forward to you to discuss now has a three-part system. We've got the Executive Council that will handle a lot of the nitty-gritty details, a lot of the HR, a lot of the finance things that we do day to day at GSA, but that a lot of people who are really excited for student representation don't really want to be involved in. Reflecting that so many of our amazing representatives don't really have that interest in HR and finance and other issues of governance, we've made a dedicated representation council that actually allow these student leaders who are really passionate about things like the women's office or international students the opportunity to just focus on that area relevant to a cause they want to represent. And then we have the faculty council. So this will be an opportunity for representatives from all 10 graduate schools at University of Melbourne. We're proposing 2 representatives per school to bring up issues relevant to that faculty, as well as to share things that are across faculties on an educational front. This reflects that graduate school is so dependent on the faculty that you're in. that the experience of someone who might be doing a really practical program such as the Masters of Teaching, where you'll spend a lot of time on placement, versus someone who'll do a highly theoretical master's or a PhD in a lab, will all have such different experiences, and that GSA needs to support all graduate students, and that our leadership needs to make sure that they're all represented and that all schools have a voice and a clear person they can go to.
Thank you, Emily. That sounds interesting, and really it highlights the importance of inclusiveness. Before I move to Madeline and ask her the question about the importance of Constitution, I understand that this attempt of you started by saying that we thought about a constitutional change and we almost got it to AGM. And what's the difference between the last time and this time? And how do I, as a graduate, know what's the difference between what was proposed last time and this time, and what's more exciting now, and what did we get wrong?
Yeah, so the last time they were proposing a very different constitutional change. The constitutional change proposed at the previous SGM that ultimately failed would have involved a two-part system with a board and a council. The council would continue to have 15 representatives elected in the same way they are now, and then the board would be appointed with up to 50% of them being non-students who wouldn't necessarily have that connection to the student experience. Every single person in our new system would be a currently enrolled graduate system. We think that is such an important part of GSA, and we're not prepared to change that with different experiences. We acknowledge that different graduate students have different expertise in different areas. That's why we've got the three-part system, so people can shine in the things that they're interested in. One of the other changes was that they proposed removing our requirement from affirmative action from the Constitution that required 50% of the currently elected councillors to be women. That was moved to the electoral regulation, and then the board had the power to change the electoral regulations without necessarily consulting students. This really concerned a lot of graduate students, and was some very negative feedback that GSA received at the time. Our new constitution includes and actually strengthens our commitment to women's leadership, making us a leader in gender equality and meeting all the new things that have actually happened at the state level to support women's leaders and making us compliant with them. And continuing to have 50% at least of the board as female identifying.
Thanks, Emily. I mean, I think that's a bit encouraging for graduates to in the community to understand that, GSA has a reflective practice, that there are times when we may not get it right, but we have the courage to actually understand what went wrong and learn from it. And I think it just strengthens the students' voice and the commitment to do that. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess one of the things is for a general secretary, the tool of the Constitution is really important. And, apart from having its legislative requirement and being a registered community organization, Madeline, how have you, in your role as the General Secretary, found the importance of the Constitution, and why do you think that these changes are really important? So welcome, Madeline, and your comments, please.
Hi, everybody. My name's Madeline. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the General Secretary at GSA. Thanks for the question, Rashna. I thought a really important point I'd like to address, just thinking about my own experience as a graduate and maybe my understanding of governance, 12 months ago before I was in this role, a little bit around what a constitution actually is and why we're even spending all this time talking about it. So briefly, the Constitution of GSA is the document that sort of describes our legal existence. It explains, what our purpose is as an organisation, our governance structure, so how the organisation is governed, as well as a whole bunch of other essential details about how GSA runs and what it does. the reason that we're asking graduates about, about the Constitution is that we exist for our graduates. So we need our graduates, approval to change this Constitution. The reason that we're going sort of through this process and why it's important is because we want to have a Constitution that is up to date, that reflects what GSA is, and it reflects our values. So as General Secretary, the Constitution's been a lot about representing our values as an organisation. The first one of that is as organisational sustainability. It's important that we're compliant with all the laws. I know this isn't very exciting to hear as a graduate student, all these governance details, but it is important that we comply with all the government legislation and make sure we're following all those regulations. And those regulations have changed since the current version of the Constitution was written. So we're looking to bring that one in line. Now, the other thing that's really important is part of my role as General Secretary is helping everybody govern effectively as leaders. We currently have 15 council members who have a huge range of experience, whether they're someone who's really passionate for representation, who knows a little bit about governance, but by and large, all of us have come to this role as a learning experience. We have 15 councillors who've come on board, with different levels of experience, but all of us, a key point is that all of us have learned a lot in this role. And some of us have been more interested in governance than others. The most important thing I think that we're all very, very united on is making sure that graduate students are empowered to lead GSA, and that is something that continues into the future while also supporting the organisational sustainability of GSA. So Emily has already done a great job of outlining some of the changes, so I'll just briefly mention it here that the main change that we're trying to bring aboard is actually empowering graduates to a greater extent, so we can see greater opportunities for graduates to take leadership and to take leadership in ways that really interest them. So for the graduates who are passionate about learning about risk and finance, we've had a few councillors this year who are studying in areas where they do have this experience in risk, a little bit of finance knowledge, and they've been able to really shine in those roles. And we're also going to be supporting more graduates to represent issues that are affecting them in their faculty to GSA on the faculty board, and support students who care about particular groups of graduates on our representation council. So I think I'm really excited about these changes. I think we will see way more students engaged with GSA, way more students being given the opportunity to make a difference in an area that they care about. And most of all, I'm excited to hear what graduates have to think about this Constitution and to continue this process of consulting with graduates. Thanks, Rashna.
Thank you, Madeline. And I think, just to the attendees and people who are listening to this session, is that this is a proposal. It's a proposal. It's a period where it's about a draft that we're wanting to hear from you. We want to listen to you. And I think the change is only effective when we are absolutely inclusive in a process of change. And there is a commitment to ensure that whatever we are able to bring, the changes, it is about sustainability, and it's about the future of GSA beyond the life of the people who are at GSA now. So it's an absolute a commitment for the future, as well as to safeguard our present. So I think to outline how we've gone about it, Jeremy, in his role as a council member, has been proactively working on the processes. And it would be good, Jeremy, if you could just bring us up to date, welcome on board, and bring us up to date about what have we done till now to bring it to the level of consultation, and then we can talk about how we can consult. But would you be able to briefly outline what we've done to date?
Yeah, sure. So we started off with a few kind of ideas about, what are the strengths of GSA currently and what can we do to improve those. So we sat down as a council, brainstormed a few ideas, and then in consultation with some lawyers, we decided on the first draft of the document. So this then underwent a few changes over a couple of months, and now there's another version of that document up on our website. So right now we are in the consultation phase. We are listening to students and key stakeholders, as Rashna said. And I guess we will be staying in this phase for the next little while until we start to approach the annual general meeting, which is where we intend to bring it to a vote. But I guess that might be discussed a bit further down the track. But essentially, most of this process has been consultation. And I guess that is one of the things, as has been mentioned, is probably the biggest weakness last time, that consultation didn't take place. So that's kind of why we are putting such a big emphasis on consultation this time around. And I believe that is probably everything we've done so far. Rashna, I want to probably get back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think that instead of just giving a piece of document to the lawyers and asking them to write the Constitution, it's about really, I think the council members went through hours of deliberation trying to see what do we have now? Why are we changing it? Do we need to change it? And if we change it, how does it add value and how does that strengthen the organization? And a bit of a selfless exercise rather than saying, what is it going to benefit the current or the members of the organization? So I think that's the exercise. And I think the consultation continues till we are able to get people's concern to date. And on a positive and affirmative note, I do have to say that we've had about 3 weeks where the Constitution has been put online. Unfortunately, it's a period where it's an online process that we focused on due to the nature of the circumstances that we are currently facing. And we have had positive feedback and I think one of the positive feedback has been the acknowledgement that we did not get it right first, and that we have heard from the students, and there's attempt to kind of bring improved participation into it. So I'd like to bring Sash on board, who as the Vice President has played quite a key role in actually engaging extensively with grad groups and the graduate representatives, and been quite key in actually drafting the GSA's policy platform. And, as a person who is, I would say, mastering her role in public policy, for her, the importance of engagement and consultation is very important. So, Sash, if I can get you to comment on an aspect that we have introduced or what we're proposing to introduce into the Constitution that strengthens that element of engagement. What are your comments on that?
Yeah, thank you, Rashna. So I'll just make a quick comment. As Emily, Madeline and Jeremy have perfectly articulated about our Constitution. And I think a big aspect of the Constitution that is included this time is about inclusivity. So greater representation of students in very different levels. Of course, we've got our governance board, so students who are more concerned about the internal workings of the organisation, but having the student representatives who represent a particular office, whether it be, for example, a women's office or an international office, and then also having representatives now who are faculty representatives. So those who sit and engage with their faculty deans or heads is a really great way to increase our input from students from different areas of the university. This is, I would say, a much more improved process to the current situation where sometimes information and consultation with students from all these different levels can be a bit more complex to gather. So in terms of that kind of policy and advocacy perspective, having more representatives in this case would be a great benefit. So the Constitution definitely enhances inclusiveness and will provide greater opportunities for more students to be representatives, but at the same time, still being in a very effective process and an effective manner. So it's a really great way for GSA to kind of influx all this feedback and then to obviously put that in turn within our policies and within our advocacy. Thank you, Rashna. I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sash. And I may just at this moment just pause and see if I can take any comments from Tessa, who is also a council member and has served as a GSA Women's Officer. Do you have a couple of comments to add, Tessa, from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. I think, yeah, I've been a counsellor now for almost a year, and I'm really the most excited about having our faculty council. A lot of the work I've done on council has really been outside of a council sort of governance role, and been really related to advocating in our faculty. And I just think that's so important. And I've really been able to harness some of the resources and energy of GSA to really help some of the students in my faculty. And I just want to make sure that all the faculties will have access to GSA in that way and can be close to the workings of GSA, so that we can use that energy and make sure we're advocating for all students in different faculties. Because I think in the graduate studies at Melbourne Uni, the way that it works is, as Emily said, your experience is so different and the issues that you're facing are often really different and linked to your faculty. So I think having that faculty representation will be really fantastic. And I also think having that representative council, and in the way that we can get people who are selected specifically for that role. You know, when you, in our current constitution, you elect sort of 15 councillors, and then from within that group, you select people to have certain portfolios. And I think this will just ensure that the people we're picking for those representative, those officers, like Women's Like International, are really focused on those issues rather than more generalist. I think it's, yet like Madeline said, we're really going to allow people to play to their strengths and really shine in particular roles, rather than sort of needing to shuffle around to where the organisation needs you. You will more be able to play to your own strengths, which I think will be an excellent opportunity for both the students who will serve in these roles in the future, but also for the organisation to have students who have the specific skills and interests to best serve those roles.
Oh, thank you, Tessa. That's really, I think, two things that really come out from that is, you know, the importance of how this work aligns very well with the aims and objectives of this organization. That one of our strategic plan objective is, and the purpose of our being is about being an inclusive and connected organization. And being inclusive is playing on people's strength, you know, working on their strength, harnessing their strength to become stronger. And I think from a staff perspective, I think the strength of the governance and the strength and the value that we get from, you know, having a larger pool of graduates involved in our governance, I think for a small organization is the strength and the backbone for staff who work alongside with you. So before I open the questions to attendees, I had a few questions, Emily, if I can ask you, and I may just jump around with the different panels on some aspects of the Constitution, which I think would be of interest to graduates. Just coming to the aims and purpose of the aim and purpose, has anything significantly changed that, you know, we should be worried or, you know, in this new Constitution from the previous one? And would you like to briefly comment on that?
Great question. The aims and purposes of GSA have not significantly changed. A major criticism of the previous proposed constitution was that it removed the protection of GSA having a purpose of fighting for free and government funded graduate education. That has been maintained. We still believe it to be a high priority for GSA. We've changed from the wording slightly to make things clearer and to better be able to advocate on the points that are already in our constitution.
Thank you, Emily. So, I mean, it's encouraging to know that, you know, we are not creating an organization that's completely different, set up for a different purpose where we move into a business model. It's still talking about the advocacy, the importance of the free higher secondary education and the commitment to have equality and access. So I think that's really, really encouraging. Madeline, if I may ask you, we do talk about, often this question about governance, which sometimes I think, I'm sure I found that very boring as a graduate myself. But can you kind of highlight in the Constitution what has been strengthened to understand that we have a strong governance, and why do we need to have a strong governance?
Yeah, so I think the creation of a board whose role specifically is governance will strengthen the governance at GSA. Certainly when I started this role, I came from a background of being involved in student groups like clubs and societies and planning events. So my experience was sort of in, getting students engaged rather than understanding what governance was. But, through spending a year in this role, you've really, we all learn a lot, and we're able to sort of focus on governance and develop the skills that we need to effectively govern GSA. And by having board members, so their role is only about governance rather than also being about representation and representing faculty issues, I think what we'll see is a group of councillors, not that we'll have everybody coming on board will be governance experts, but that those people will really be able to focus on governance and learn and grow in those roles so that they're able to be an effective board together. So I think the main thing will be is that the students who are on the board, they will be given a greater opportunity to specifically focus on developing their governance skills, as opposed to developing their governance skills while helping out with events, while dealing with lots of other issues. And as a consequence, we'll see improved governance.
Thank you, Madeline. I may just ask Jeremy a particular question, is that, you did talk about the importance that, a process was utilized to kind of ensure that we are, seeking comments from people. I know that recently we had the Grad Leaders Forum, and we had an ability to get some feedback. And I think the feedback was about issues related to ensuring that, the composition have that representation of women. Another idea that was put forward to us is how committed are we to have Indigenous Aboriginal women representation in our Constitution. And there were, great feedback about trying to ensure that the organization ensures there's faculty representation. I think these came out strong. So can I ask you, as a person who's been involved in the process, is that, when we go through this constitutional phase, what attempt will be taken by Council to incorporate some of these comments again into the draft that we put out for voting? What is the process you're envisaging?
Yeah, definitely. So the Graduate Student Leaders Forum was actually really good. A lot of councillors were present. We had a lot of really encouraging discussions about the Constitution and on the issues that you just mentioned. So council's aim with this is to, I guess, collate a lot of the feedback at the end of this process. Discuss it amongst ourselves, see how it fits in with the aims of the organisation. But then I think, as you've raised a couple of times, the Constitution is a legal document. So we will be needing to take a bit of legal advice on a lot of the things that is raised to us to make sure that we are legally compliant. So I guess that is also a really important step in the process. And I will say that a lot of the issues raised were about wanting to strengthen our representation, like you said, of certain groups, of certain faculties. And I do believe a lot of that will be achieved through the Representation Council and the Faculty Board. So it's really encouraging to see that the feedback we are getting is already kind of on the track we were already heading on anyway. So, so far, I think from a council perspective, this process has actually been very rewarding, very good to see. And it's good to know that we are at least on the right track, and we'll keep taking on that feedback right up until the AGM.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I may come to Sash to ask you a very important question, which you highlighted that, the representative work, we at the moment, GSA already have an amazing group of grad groups, graduate representatives and council members. And some of you have had that journey of coming from grad groups to grad representatives onto the council and or been a part of other programs. Do you see this, this kind of mechanism that is there for people to, you know, get this soft touch interest in the organization through faculty representation and then develop their interest in representation and governance to be a process that can be facilitated through this constitutional change, Sash?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do think every councillor probably has a different story of how they started at GSA and how is it that they got in touch with GSA. Having faculty reps, I think, will open up GSA as a union to students that we may not have reached before as much personally, and to have representatives that are very knowledgeable and very expertise about their faculty. GSA offers many programs at the moment, including the LEAD program, by facilitating more than 140 grad groups. For example, we have many ways to engage, but having that stronger faculty opportunity will bring us students that may be from other areas of engagement. So I do think, yes, this will be a great opportunity and even process to have students, I guess, have a bit of a feel of what GSA is about, and then possibly in the long term connect with GSA on other levels. And they may be interested in governance, for example, or leading a particular portfolio council role. And it's a really good way, I think, rather than what happens right now is that a council member, once elected, is just put straight into the deep end of governance representation. And it's quite a lot. And it can be quite confronting sometimes, having to learn, particularly the governance side. But this, I think, will be a really great way to kind of ease students in, definitely. Me personally, I think I first got in touch with GSA through the LEAD program and then through a grad group. And then that's how I kind of slowly made my way and learned more about council. But I think every student will have a very different story. And I think it'll be so exciting to hear about those who came in from their faculty. And that is something that GSA really wants to improve our relationship and engagement with. So it'll be really, really great to have that process, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And before I just invite questions from the attendees or some questions that I have for all of you, is that Tessa, you did raise one very important aspect about being an advocate, you know, trying to be on GSAs, whether you are on, I mean, at the moment we have a council. Can you elaborate a little bit about, you know, the expectations and, like, you know, how you have found that role of being a good advocate for your fellow students? How's that journey for you, and how does that, you know, how are you empowered being on GSA Council to do that work?
Sorry, part of that question just cut out for me. My internet connection is a little unstable.
So I was wanting to ask you, you did raise this very important aspect about working with the faculty and being a good advocate for, you know, issues that are emerging for you, for the people in, you know, in that particular course, or how has that been strengthened by being a GSA Council member?
Yeah, look, absolutely, Rashna. I think it's something, just being in that sort of cohort of students who found that there were some issues in our course. Yeah. Just knowing, having the connection I did have to GSA meant that I knew we could get support and we could advocate, and we ended up having a really positive outcome. This issue was in relation to people being placed late for secondary teaching placements, and the first round of placements this year, not a single secondary teacher candidate was placed late, so that was a fantastic outcome. And I think just having that connection with GSA just meant I knew where to go for support, and that I could, you know, flesh out some ideas of who to approach with this issue and the best strategy to resolve it. And I just think that for all faculties, there's so much benefit in having that connection with GSA that can, you know, help them know. There's so much lessons we can learn from each other in faculties of how to approach these course issues. And I think that if we have this link where every single faculty can take advantage of GSA in the way that I could, just because I happen to be on council, then there's going to be so much benefit to all the different graduate students in all the different faculties. Is that sort of answer your question?
Yeah. I think because, you know, I think it's very interesting the way I can talk from a perspective of a CEO, because I think my strength may be in knowing how to write a policy or, you know, to run an organization. But I think the biggest wealth and the strength for me is the graduate students and the representatives, the council members, the grad groups, and the board that actually provide the framework for me to lead the organization in the right direction, because you only know it from a logistic perspective. You don't actually know what the lived experience of graduates are. And so I think the fact that this organization will have so many more people participating in the life of this organization makes it very, very exciting for me and the staff, because I think, you know, the intelligence, your knowledge, your experience only adds value to the work that we do and make it really real, the work that we do, rather than being very theoretical. So I think it definitely does. So I may just take an opportunity to invite our two attendees to ask any questions. So in no order, if you're comfortable me inviting you, if you can just, I may ask Tavita to to allow them to speak if they would like to, or post a question for us. If there's any questions that you would, it's just in relation to confidentiality. We cannot call you out by your names, but if you would like to agree to speak, just put on unmute yourself and you can talk to us. Otherwise, you can also send me a question on chat. Wow, I'll wait for them to do that, but I'm always excited to ask questions on behalf of other people. So over to you, Emily, and I am wondering and asking you this question is that how do graduates actually you know, vote, or how do we say yes to this constitution, and what's the process?
So we'll be having a SGM where graduate students will be invited to vote. With the current changes, it's very likely that SGM will be online, but we're committed to ensuring that as many people as are interested are able to be at the SGM and to share their voices there. You can also submit before then in actually giving feedback to the currently proposed one now. You can do that through our online form. You can also contact various GSA emails with your feedback. As well as these sessions.
Yeah, and I think also is some of you know the council members, you know, so always giving a call and letting them know what your thoughts are, and there is no right and wrong answer. So, you know, it's, I think Jeremy's put it very aptly that, you know, we've collectively thought of these ideas, which is good for the organization. And we will, we've put this document together and understand that it is a work in progress, and once we're able to collate it, you know, it will be put to us SGM for voting. And this current situation, I think, may call for an online vote, or, you know, hopefully things will all change tomorrow in a miracle and we'll all be fine. So that's the hope we have. I have a couple more questions to you, Madeline, in relation to who's eligible to vote for, you know, like if I'm like, how do I know whether I'm eligible to vote for the SGM or not?
Yeah, thanks, Rashna. So as you know, GSA is for all graduate students, and all graduate students are members of GSA. So any currently enrolled graduate is eligible to vote at the SGM.
Thank you. And I think the next question probably is something that, you know, the changes are all brought, and what happens, does like SGM, we haven't, there's a question which is fantastic about, I was wondering with recent reports emerging sexual misconduct, if GSA is coming up with a campaign, and if any of the council members would like to respond. Emily, would you like to respond, or I'm happy to respond on your behalf?
I can respond. It's a shame that our women's officer isn't here to answer this question. So one of the things with the recent publicity, we're very aware that this involves a very specific set of circumstances and want to respect the survivor's privacy and the requests there. GSA has done a lot, particularly in the space of appropriate supervisor-student relationships, which we're continuing to push for, because particularly for our research students, that interaction you have with your supervisor can be such an intense environment, and it should never be an environment where you feel unsafe, and the power dynamics in that space is not okay when it comes to these issues, as well as there's just so many places where we know students, particularly women identifying students, can be victimized and put into situations where they don't feel comfortable. We are continuing to work with the Respect Task Force, as well as push for the university to do more around sexual misconduct on campus and off campus, particularly for our students who are often at placements and off campus, as well as for the safety of students who are at home right now. We know that difficult at home situations, including family violence, have seen an increase of reportings, as well as we know that many people who are in those situations don't make formal reports, and that GSA needs to be there to support graduate students in these really difficult circumstances.
Is there any other comments from any other council members? I probably just wanted to add that we are very, very strong, and we did participate in providing a feedback to AMSU in their response that we strongly condemn sexual harassment and misconduct at our workplace or any other situation. And in relation to campaign is, apart from responding to this particular media release, I think the organization itself has very strong policies, and there is no tolerance to any such kind of behavior at our workplace or at our events. And I think by having the changes through these faculty nominees and representatives, we will just strengthen our capacity to continue on our campaign on these kind of issues. So thank you for that question. It's very close and dear to all our hearts, and we absolutely condemn it. So if there are no other questions, I may pose one particular question in relation to the period of transition that is important for all of us to know. So we currently have an election campaign going, and I'm doing the last plug-in to say to people that the nomination closes at 10 o'clock tomorrow on the 17th. I'm sure it is an exciting, wonderful opportunity. So please jump on and please feel free to use your time valuably to put in a nomination form. But I guess that we do need to talk to people about currently, Madeline, the elections are being held. Would the elections be based on our current constitutional rules, and what are we proposing for the transitional phase? Because we do have an important piece of work, and that is looking at the electoral regulations, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks, Rashna. So just to clarify, these elections that are happening right now will happen as per the old constitution, because obviously the new constitution hasn't taken effect yet and wouldn't until the AGM, until it was approved by our membership. So this election will happen as per to the existing constitution, and over the course of next year, the new elected council will do the hard yards on figuring out our electoral regulations and rewriting those so they fit with the new version of the constitution. And the next election, the one that we'll have in 2021, provided that the membership votes in favour of this constitution, will happen according to the new constitution.
So, I mean, I think the point we want to emphasize is it's not that, you know, we vote for a constitution and things change overnight. It is a change that we will considerably put some effort and time to ensure that there are processes in place for students to advocate on any issues that are not running well. Like, I mean, if you're not adhering to the processes of the constitution, that there are mechanisms and processes for us to address those concerns. So I have a couple more minutes, about 5 or 10 minutes before we finish this session. So it would be really, as I wait for any more further questions, I would probably like to go start just rounding up by, you know, getting each of the panel member to kind of tell me what that experience it is for them to have gone through this process and what they value the most in this constitutional change. Because whether we get this through the line or not, it's a part of learning and what we've learned about it. And I may start off saying, I found this process very humbling, because I think it was a process where I felt a group of wonderful young people who actually had the vested interest of the graduates prime in their mind, and who could selflessly work towards you know, creating a stronger organization, and the thought for others really humbling, and really proud to be a part of this organization. So Emily, just your final thoughts on it.
It's been a intense journey of looking at constitutions. I'm a nerd, so I've loved reading different constitutions from different student organizations and non-for-profits, and learning about different ways of operating and strengths and weaknesses. But it's also been a process of evaluating where GSA's weaknesses lie and what we can do to make that better. Actually pinpointing the issues and finding ways we can solve it for the benefit of all students. We know that there are places where GSA can improve, and this is the proposal of how to do it. We want to see more students involved. We want to learn from what happened with the previous constitutional reform. And I think the current global pandemic has just proved to me even more how if we had had this system in place, the extra things GSA is capable of doing and responding and being a more representative organisation.
Thank you, Emily. And Madeline?
Yeah, I think so. This has been a long process for us. It's been something we've been thinking about for, you know, since last year. And the process has been a lot of understanding, you know, the legal nature of a document, working with a fantastic group of lawyers who've been able to give us really good advice and really clear advice about, you know, what needs to change and what the nature of those changes are. But I'm going to echo Emily. The best part of this process has been able to sit down and be like, we're at a historic moment for GSA, being granted the opportunity to think as a group together about what the best way forward for GSA would be, being able to think about what is the best governance structure to make GSA function well, and support graduates. Being able to be involved in those discussions has been such an exciting thing. And I'm very excited, even though it's a future of GSA that I won't be part of, I'm very excited to see a future GSA with this incredible level of engagement and graduate student empowerment.
Thank you, Madeline. Jeremy?
Yeah, I think, so from my experience when I first came into this role, I was the only person from my faculty. And I know there were a lot of people from my faculty really curious about how does the GSA actually operate? How do I, participate and affect change within it? And I think these type of questions were pretty prominent too during the graduate leaders forum. And I think, this new constitution addresses that really well. It really enables graduate students' voices to be heard and projected to the university on a scale that they haven't been currently under our current model. But personally, from what I've enjoyed through this process has been, I know that, probably because of my degree, but I've enjoyed looking at kind of the legal aspects of it, I guess, learning a bit more about, the Associated Incorporation Act in 2012, seeing it, how it plays out into the kind of context of the GSA, and having these discussions with council and graduate students about what the values of the organization are, what are these changes improving upon what we currently have. That has been really great, really inspiring to see. And it's really good to see that at least currently the organization is thinking about its future and where we're headed after this. So I found it a very, very, very kind of inspiring and nice process to be a part of.
Thank you, Jeremy. Sash.
Yeah, so I think in one word to summarize it for me is that it's been a very informative process, informative being kind of working through this process with council and with GSA and with students. So as a policy student, I'm a bit like Jeremy in terms of what he said, and I really enjoyed looking at the nitty gritty and looking at the details of the Constitution, seeing how wording and how the way things are stated in the Constitution can actually mean a lot once it's constituted. So I think that's been a really fascinating process. And then thinking more broadly about once these wordings have been changed, what does that mean in real life? Like what is the benefits and the influence that this will have for the organisation in the future? So it's been really great to think realistically about what will happen when we now have hopefully faculty representation and greater kind of focus on governance in some areas and in office bearer roles in other areas. So just thinking about the long-term benefit of that is a really good thought. I think that's what I'm most looking forward to seeing with GSA in the future. Even when I'm not here, I really hope to hear that, that this kind of structure, this reform structure has played both short-term and long-term benefits.
Thank you, Sash. And lucky last, Tess.
Well, I think for me, it's empowering. I think I'm just so excited to be able to, instead of, as a council, trying to figure out what students want, we're sort of giving people from all those different communities their own voice, instead of us having to think, oh, hey, what is going on in, I don't know, Faculty of Agriculture and Veterinary Science. We can, we're now able to let those communities speak for themselves. And I just think that's a really positive change for GSA, and the same in the Representative Council. Instead of having, 15 people and then from those 15 deciding, okay, who's going to be in charge of LGBTIQ, who's going to be in charge of parents, we can, get someone who's really from that community, who's really passionate about that issue, to be the voice of that community. And I think that, that empowering notion of our new constitution to me is just so exciting, that we're letting, we're giving a voice to heaps of different communities in our graduate student community.
Okay, so we do have another session planned for the next hour for anyone who's attending then, but I do want to appreciate and thank the two attendees who've been patiently listening and providing some feedback and questions. So thank you so much. And a big thank you to the panelists who've joined us. And I don't think this is the end of the consultation. In fact, the journey continues. Please jump onto our website, fill in the forms, fill in the feedback form, talk to any councillor. Their contact details are on our website. if you know anybody at GSA, even if it's the staff, ring the 1-800 number and, you know, provide us feedback. It is about listening, and I think we definitely did not succeed the first time because I think we didn't spend time listening. We're hoping by spending the time listening and hearing the concerns and being true to what this organization is about, that this will be a process to step it up and set it up for the future. So thank you all, and a big thank you to the attendees.
Thank you so much, guys. It means so much to us to hear your interest in our Constitution.
Yeah, thanks for being here, everyone. We know that constitutions are not necessarily the sexiest topic, but and there's so many other distractions out now. We really appreciate you coming along. Feel free to ask any questions here, or to use those other ways to get in contact with us.
Thank you, everyone.